A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime Daily, the podcast covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. We are recording this on March 9th, 2022. Our guests today are Bolanos and Nancy Moscatiello. Hello, Louis. We're going to bring on Nancy in a minute. For those of you who are regulars, you all know that Louis is a former homicide detective with 30 years of law enforcement experience, including with the DEA and going undercover with the drug cartels. And we also know that Louis runs Get Bit Investigations and does a ton of pro bono work for survivors and victims of crime. Welcome back, Louis.
Hi, Anna. Thank you. You do your share of pro bono work also. You'll need to know that. So you're my go-to when I need an incredible sounding board. But I'm happy to be here, especially on this case.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to say this is an all-star crime show filled with truly amazing guests, because in a few minutes, Nancy's going to join us. And I mean this when I say this. Nancy is true crime royalty, because this is a journalist, a television producer who has worked on every major crime show that you have ever loved, and she's worked every major case that you have ever loved. She's a behind-the-scenes person, doesn't usually like to be in front of the camera or by a microphone, but I convinced her, please come on this program, because she's been on this case from day one and has amazing access. We are talking about the kidnapping of a California mother that the FBI now says was a total hoax. We are talking about the Sherri Papini case. Police now say that she faked her abduction while hiding out with an ex-boyfriend in Southern California. You're going to remember this from 2006 because it made huge headlines. Louis, I mean, the world's been turned upside down on this case. This got such huge attention, so many resources, and so many other missing women do not get that, yet Sherri did.
Yeah, it's amazing how many times we come across that when somebody goes missing for whatever reason, it doesn't get the attention we think it deserves. And certainly the family members or friends thinks it deserves. But Sherri Papini got every bit and more of the attention that she wanted. And now maybe she's getting more than she wants. It's quite a roller coaster ride. But I have to tell you, I just like you, I spent days reading over this, the complaint, and I have never read anything like it. I know you're going to attach it to the comment section below where the viewers can check this out themselves. It's an incredible document of roller coasters.
Right? It is
wow.
It's wow, because the narrative that we were told that this mother had been kidnapped, while she was jogging, and then she reappears on Thanksgiving Day, and oh my God, she had been taken by two Hispanic women who were going to sell her. She had been branded, she was a mess. They cut off her beautiful blonde hair. It was horrific, It was one of those cases. So it was such a big case that back when I was working on Crime Watch Daily, the television show, along with Nancy, we, of course, covered it as well. You're going to recognize the voice here. This is the one, the only Chris Hansen. We're going to play a clip.
Sherri Papini's kidnapping plays like a Hollywood movie, with an unbelievable cast of characters. The beautiful missing mom, the handsome heartbroken husband, the mysterious wealthy donor, and a hard-edged hostage negotiator.
Now the world is going to be looking for you.
But after Sherri's miraculous release, many have begun to question whether the story is fact or pure fiction.
Pure fiction, according to the FBI. Pure fiction. The thing is, it's taken 6 years, Louis, to get to this point. She was abducted in she was allegedly abducted in 2016. And now everything has come out. And the FBI, sometimes they hold stuff back. Not on this one. They got details about what she did, how she did it. She cut her own hair is what they say. How she beat herself up because she looked horrible when she was picked up.
Yeah. Do we really have to say she was allegedly abducted? I mean, in my mind, there's no doubt she was not abducted.
No,
right?
she wasn't.
Even though her family and close friends are still leaning that way amazingly. But yeah, she started quite a story for herself, and the motive behind that, I think we'll get into that a little bit. What causes somebody to do something like that?
Yeah.
Is there a history in their life of that type of behavior?
Seems like it, right? In this case. So here's how the story went. Sherri was abducted. This is the story. Was abducted while out for a run near Redding, California on November 2nd of 2016. Her phone and earbuds were found on the side of the road. No signs of her. No ransom notes. Nothing. It's like, poof, she disappears for 3 weeks. Then 22 days after she disappears, she is found on the side of the road about 150 miles away from her home. She's a mess. She's got a chain wrapped around her waist. This is how the trucker is describing her. And the chain has her arm restrained. She has bruises. She has burns. Her beautiful blonde hair has been cut off. She just looks horrible. It looks like her nose is broken. She's lost weight. She's emaciated. She's like 87 pounds. So, the whole world is now, thank God, Sherri's home.
Right,
thank
on
God.
Thanksgiving, right? On Thanksgiving, just to jack it up.
Really, it's like it's out of a movie. She shall return on the executives are saying she shall return on Thanksgiving Day for drama. And then she gives police a description of her abductors. She said 2 Hispanic women who wore bandanas over their face took her. And the fact that she was found alive after telling this story, she was taken to the hospital, all this stuff, just made this an incredible story of survival. But it wasn't true.
Yeah,
it wasn't true. The FBI now says 39-year-old Sherri Papini made it all up. And for a short time, for a few days, I believe 5 days, she actually was held against her will in a jail cell. Yes, with real restraints for her alleged crimes here. And this is what she's been charged with: making false statements to the police, plus mail fraud for using $30,000 in victims' assistance funds. I think this is just the beginning of it. Yeah. Federal prosecutors have released a detailed affidavit, which we are attaching, as Lewis said, to this. If you all want to read it yourself, it's 55 pages. We are going to reference it significantly, but we know how much you all love to read things yourself. It's worth it. And we're devoting this entire episode to this case because it's so outrageous. It's so outrageous. Okay, so someone who's been following this case from day one is Nancy Moscatiello, and we're going to bring her on now. We worked at Crime Watch together. And Nancy, I remember the day this happened, and from that day on, you were so skeptical. You didn't believe it.
I don't know, something just wasn't ringing right. And I would think, while everybody was looking and searching and we didn't know anything, at that point, you hold out hope and you think, okay, well, let's see what happens. But when she reappeared, I think through the whole newsroom, we were like, no, like it just didn't sit right. Working on so many cases where people were truly abducted and what had happened and how, let's say, they were either rescued or never found, or of course, unfortunately, turn up, dead. I can think of, 2 cases I've worked on that they just reappear. One in the 70s that I did an old case on, and then Abby Hernandez, which was maybe like within 10 years that somebody just set her free.
Okay, so everyone is a little suspicious when she's abducted, but nonetheless, these things do happen. But when she's actually found alive and the details start emerging about what she said happened to her, that's, Nancy, when you got even more suspicious.
So, there was very little things coming out. I remember reading some little posts on Reddit and different things of people saying, some information from the hospital where she was taken, or things that didn't quite sound accurate of the behaviors and stuff. Again, all hearsay, all things you don't know, but it just seemed off that people were not buying things. And, and then she also had there was some past information on social media that had come out. We had talked to the ex-husband. She had a husband prior to Keith Papini. We talked to him, and he was very like, we got married because, she had a health thing and she wanted health insurance. So we got married and I went off into the service. Like, it was odd. It was, there was a post under her maiden name that was, come to find out, kind of along the lines of what she ultimately told her story about. So there was just little things coming out that seemed strange from her background.
But here's the thing that I think we're always all faced with. The woman's found alive. She looks pretty horrible. Police are not saying publicly that they don't believe her, correct?
Right.
So it's almost as if you will be viewed as beating up the victim if you dare to challenge their story when, the country is enamored with the mother of two with the long blonde hair, the pretty girl who's been returned and has survived, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about now what was the story that was told and then what it is that investigators found. And the big change in the case, I think, to me is the most fascinating. It's always about how do you break a case? How does it happen? And in this case, it involves DNA in the strangest way possible. So when she was found alive, she's taken to the hospital and the authorities gather everything that she's wearing and they're testing it for DNA. They find on her clothing an unknown male. It is not her husband. And they start running it through the database. And there's no hit. And for years, there's no hit until then in 2020. This is like my favorite. In 2020, everything changes. The authorities get permission from a judge to go ahead and look for familial DNA, in all those databases that we all upload our spit to. and they get a hit. And it comes back to a man who has two sons. Ultimately, all this DNA leads them to one person who used to date Sherri, was engaged to her, and lived at that time in Southern California in Costa Mesa. Is this unbelievable? And the way they did it was they went through the man's trash. They got a bottle of iced tea and they matched the DNA. Right. Since the authorities haven't named him and he is not charged, we will not be naming him. So this ex-boyfriend apparently, in 2020, when the cops came to him, finally shared everything he says that he knew. And he said he had been waiting for the cops. He said if the cops didn't come to him, then why was he going? Here's my problem. He was silent the entire time. He apparently didn't know in the beginning. This is how the story goes, right? That he gets contacted by her, hasn't heard from her in a long time. Sherri tells the ex-boyfriend, right? He's not nearly the good-looking, fit guy, okay, that she marries. So I'm sure he's thrilled that this woman is interested in him. But she tells him this story that her husband has been beating her. He's so abusive. She tried to go to the police. The police will not listen to her. She's scared for her life. Will he rescue her? Classic, right? They say that when they first interviewed him, he provided details about her injuries and other things that the public didn't know. And that was one of the reasons that they believed that he was telling the truth, because no one else could know what it is that he knew, right?
Yeah, and that's very common, as you know. Those are called control facts. Those are controls that they intentionally keep to themselves and not tell anybody, because it really has a huge effect on confirming or denying if the information you're receiving from somebody is correct. Right. And in this case, it did its job. Right. They did a pretty good job hanging on to that. And yeah, he shared quite a bit.
Right. So I'm having trouble understanding and believing the setup in the house. And this is, to me, very important about. There is a manhunt, right? There is a massive search for a mother who is believed to have been abducted. She's missing for weeks now, but she's actually in this 2-bedroom apartment in Costa Mesa. She has one bedroom that he's given her. Someone else is in the other bedroom, and then he's sleeping on the couch. And he tells the authorities they never had sex. He says it was a different kind of relationship, that he was really trying to help her. But as it turns out, Nancy, didn't other members of his family know or come to realize that she was there?
Well, not only that, because remember, they were engaged in 2006. So they knew her. it wasn't like she was a stranger to them. The couple of the family members or sources have told me that, yeah, they knew her. So it was like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember her. Again, like you were saying, 2-bedroom apartment. He's sleeping on the couch. She's in one room. In the complaint, they don't talk about that second bedroom necessarily. But in the records I've looked at and from people I've talked to, I know that there was someone else living there at one point. That person has passed since. So I don't know if were they around for entirely, and that just unfortunately they had passed away since. But yeah, it's an interesting question. But cousins and other people have said, yeah, they knew she was there. And it wasn't something they were plugged into. They didn't know she was missing. They don't follow the news. They weren't attuned to all of that. So,
you don't find that shocking? Like, part of me does not believe this. Part of me does not believe that no one knew that she was missing, because there is a reference in the paperwork that at one point, when I believe it was one of the cousins was like, wait a minute, I think that's the lady on the news. I mean, come on. Are we really and he went to work every day. He went to work every day and he left her there, and she apparently never left the house. And I find it extraordinary.
She even asked if he him to board up the window at one point.
Right, board up the window. And here's why all of this is so important. Over the years, as the FBI continued to interview her and re-interview her, they asked for details. Tell me, where were you held? What did it look like? What was the room like? Describe the closet. Describe this. Describe that. Turns out that the FBI was able to match details of her story to details of the apartment and the closet in which she was staying in Costa Mesa, and they took pictures of it.
Yeah.
Right?
They confronted him with those details, and they showed her pictures of when they finally let the cat out of the bag. But you know what? That we say that all the time. When people are trying to mislead law enforcement in their investigations, the best lies are those lies that are combined, feathered perfectly with the truth. And she did that in many aspects here. There's so much here. And I think, law enforcement at some point had to wonder if he was involved in the kidnapping. Right. And he even said, I don't even know 2 Mexican gals. Right. Because she was pointing everything toward 2 Hispanic females. Mm-hmm. And he's tried to distance himself as much as he could for that. But he probably at some point realized that, hey, I may be considered a suspect. And he knows her better than anyone, as good as that can be, thinking that maybe, what if she says, he took me? I was there. He could have easily brought him in as the person that spearheaded, organized this whole kidnapping.
In the hearing from the other day, her attorney said, that the United States is saying, oh, okay, alleged kidnapping, and he's saying, no, she was kidnapped. Like she's still sticking with that. So
right, and when the authorities confronted her with photos of his apartment in Costa Mesa, and she was like, oh, well, it kind of looks like it. No, but it's not really. And then they said, to her, they're like, this is the amazing part of this interrogation. According to court records, her husband, Keith, was in the room while she's being questioned about this. So it's 4 years later? And he's in the room.
And earlier in the complaint, when because there's a lot of detail of the time gap, right, over these last 5 years, where in 2017, she would either go in and speak to them, or her husband would call and say she went to a therapy session and remembered X, Y, and Z. And it was all these little details that started matching up with things in the apartment, things to explain away what happened. Right. And they noted all the inconsistencies where she would say, this happened, my hands were behind me the whole time. They were zip tied behind me, and then I chewed them free. But never, how do you chew them behind your back, right? And then the next time it was, they were in front of me and I chewed them free. So there was all these things that each time she came in and they went back to talk to her, their things kept changing.
Mm-hmm. And don't you find it interesting that while the authorities are still investigating this and getting updates, even though, the Papinis are sharing their information, in some cases voluntarily calling, saying, she remembered, I remember.
Right.
that the media, they were not doing any more interviews. You know,
Oh yeah, no.
as I recall,
there was
Sherri
nothing
never
public about this.
she never sat down for an interview, did she?
No,
She
just
was
the
the
husband.
she was the big get. Everybody wanted her. Now we know why she didn't sit down for the interview, because it was all bogus. But you know, most of the time people do, even when it's bogus, sit down. I'm just really, really surprised about that.
Well, that's the funny thing. She was sitting down with them. She was cooperating. I
Right.
mean, you know, and that's what her attorney said at the hearing yesterday when they were discussing, and we'll get to that later, but he said she's cooperated all these years. She's always come in and talked to you.
And that's true. I mean,
It's
that
true.
cannot be denied, right? That cannot be denied. Now, remember we were talking about, like Nancy saying, all the details that she's saying of the room and all of that. So she talked about this table that she very specifically remembered and described to the FBI about the table that was used when she was branded. Remember, everyone was shocked. It's like, who are these people who abducted her and then burned a symbol on her arm? What kind of, you know? And she then told the authorities when she was picked up, she said, oh, well, I was branded because, you know, I had tried to escape and it was punishment, but then she was branded for another reason. Oh, this is the other thing she kept telling law enforcement when she was found. She said, my kidnappers told me that law enforcement was involved and I was being kidnapped for a person in law enforcement and I was going to be sold to them. So I don't want to talk to the police because I'm so scared. And the authorities were like, well, we have a woman who's just been returned from, you know, a 3-week odyssey. We can't interview her because she's freaking out. So they give the husband, Keith, a tape recorder to conduct the initial interview.
That's crazy, unheard of. But that's happening in the ambulance. It starts in the ambulance where she lets out a little bit of information saying, I don't trust law enforcement because of this. And it continues that. So they come up with a great idea to let the husband do the interview. I've never heard of that. And for years, she would not allow herself to be interviewed, right, without the husband in the room.
Husband there.
Right?
Yes.
At the end, we'll get there. When she's confronted, finally, things change. Where he leaves the room, and I know when he left that room, that conversation of that interview and what she said at that time with him out of the room is going to come out on video. You better believe that was recorded. We don't have that access to that yet, but we will.
Yeah. That's what she says is, so now she's been confronted. Look, here are the photos of the room that you've described, the bathroom, you know, the tile work, everything that you have described to us over the last few years. We have the matching photos and they all belong to your ex-boyfriend's home. So come on, lady, spill the beans. And so the husband leaves the room and Lewis is referring to this. It's so brilliant. She tells the authorities, oh, I've been a bad girl. Maybe I flirted when I shouldn't have, you know, with other guys. And
well, I think they even said, like, you know, you were being held at your ex-boyfriend's, basically. And she was like, oh, he would never do that. He would never, ever, ever. You know, going along, I think, still with maybe that's who abducted you, you know, like play. Because that also came out in the hearing yesterday. They said she was not aware until her arrest that she was the target, that they were really strict about keeping it that they were looking at for these abductors. And that I found that interesting. And that's kind of what they're alluding to here, because they was like, you know, we think he's the one that took you. And she was like, oh, yeah, he would never do that.
No, he loves me. That's what she said. No, he loves me. But then she does admit that she's flirted. And I think you know, several agencies have reported that she had several affairs while she was married to Keith. And in fact, when she was missing, right? When she was missing, not found yet, and they went through her phone, what did they find, Nancy? They
had found 2 phone numbers put in under female names that were actually men. And these were men that she met on like a business trip of some sort, and another one that she knew from like 2001 or 2002, someone else that she had dated briefly. And they were in under, you know, female names, but that was known that they had traveled to go see who these men were.
Right, so, because that would make perfect sense, you know.
Make sense, yeah.
Exactly. So they kind of rule that out. But now we know from the very beginning, it's like, why is she hiding the names of guys in her cell phone under the names of women? And she's trying to meet up with them. Come on now, Sherri, come on. So what I find interesting is that, so honestly, since 2020, the Papinis, Keith, and for sure Sherri, have known what the authorities believe that she really did, right?
Yes and no. They know that they were coming in for questioning, and that they was, from what I understood, what it sounded like in the hearing yesterday, was that they were leading them down the path that we're getting closer to the abductors. Not that you're the bad person here.
Before we go on, we've really got to take a quick break for our sponsor, and then we'll go on with this insane case. I know that you've heard me talk about HelloFresh before, but if you haven't checked it out yet, now's really the time. HelloFresh delivers pre-portioned ingredients to your door, including farm fresh produce that arrives within a week, so you get the convenience without skimping on quality. HelloFresh recipes are easy to follow, quick to make, with steps and pictures that guide you along the way. There are 50 weekly recipes featuring a range of flavors, cuisines, and ingredients, so you never get bored. Try something new every week. I have thoroughly enjoyed my HelloFresh box, and there was so much in there that it really did last for a long time. And little ingredients that I keep here that I use later, like the marinara sauce. I mean, it just, and when we talk about the produce, honestly, just really, really fresh, beautiful vegetables. So go to HelloFresh.com/TCD16, that's for True Crime Daily, and use the code TCD16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. I love a free gift. That's HelloFresh.com/TCD16. Don't forget to use TCD16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. A new year means new home projects, and Angie, formerly Angie's List, makes it easy to get the job done right, from routine maintenance to a dream remodel. Just bring them your project online or with the Angie app. Answer a few questions, and Angie will actually handle the rest from start to finish, or connect you with a top pro who can. So you can start crossing things off that 2022 to-do list in just a few taps. Download the free Angie mobile app today or visit Angie.com. That's ANGI.com.
So they were keeping them in the dark on, at some point you're going down.
I see. I see. So they're presenting it as like, we believe you were abducted by an ex-boyfriend. Not that she was in on it, but here's
what
even though
we're
they
finding,
know. Oh, I see.
Leading to him, this person, and they kept following up and coming in and talking to them, but the whole time they probably, and Louis, you would probably speak better, maybe they were going down two paths. Okay, we have truly was abducted by this man, and a hoax, right? So I think that's the path that we're looking at. From what it sounded like, from what the assistant U.S. attorney, when they presenting why they didn't want her to have bail, like they went into more detail, and that was one of the things they pointed out. They said we were very strict about the information, and very few people knew it, that she was our actual target.
In the affidavit, they get into a lot of details about her physical appearance, right? Because everyone was shocked. And in fact, the husband shared about how he was warned, she looks really, really bad. This is going to be very jarring to you. She was 87 pounds. She had burns and marks everywhere on her body. So severe, so very severe that, especially the branding, that I think on face value, people were like, oh my God, what did they do to her? You know how some things look self-inflicted, right? Like, you scratch here, you scratch there. But this really took it to a whole new level. And in the affidavit, it describes how the ex-boyfriend recounts how
every one of those,
every one of the changes in her appearance, and at what time in her, 22 days there, that this all was happening. And she kept asking him to hurt her. And he says he refused.
Yeah.
So this goes on for pages in the affidavit about the changing in her appearance, which will be consistent with the story that she tells. So the ex-boyfriend tells the detectives that she was hurting herself, and that She asked him to punch her in the face and he refused to do so. He says she's the one who cut her own hair and that she purposely hit her head on the bathtub and the bathroom floor. Now, that is painful and nasty.
It's commitment.
Well, remember, though, originally, when you read the complaint, too, she told them that was caused by the two Hispanic women because they would punish her for when she would make noise and they would hit her head on the sink or the this or the that. So she was matching up the injuries.
Right. Then this is also interesting. So she had rashes on the inside of her legs. I mean, there were multiple things that were wrong with her. It's not like just one simple thing. And he tells the detectives, well, she asked me to get cleaning supplies because, while she was staying, she was always cleaning the house. And then he notices that this rash is developing and he kept buying her like ointments to help and it wasn't. So I think the inference there is that she was using the chemicals to cause these rashes.
Mm-hmm.
So now I want to talk about the branding, right? Because when she was found, she had this burn on her shoulder, on her arm, and she told the authorities that she was branded by her captors. So according to the ex-boyfriend, he has a version of how that happened. Nancy, how did this happen?
So for when he said that she asked him to go purchase a wood burning tool at a craft store for her. And then I guess the tool is one of these things that came with like little brass letters that you could, burn into wood or words or sayings or whatever. And so he went and purchased that. And then, she explained what she wanted him to do with it and what she wanted written on her. And he said, I think he told authorities what she wanted, and he didn't understand what it meant, but it had some type of meaning to her. And so he helped do that, and he wanted to give her the ointments to put on it for the burn and to help heal it, and she didn't want to use any of that.
The ex-boyfriend told the authorities that she wanted to be branded on her right shoulder using that wood-burning tool. And he said because she was left-handed, and so therefore he used his right hand to hold her arm down. And here's the amazing thing. It's like he's describing he was really nervous. He didn't want to do this. Right. He could see the, quote, the tool was so hot, it glowed red. But at the same time, he's telling the authorities he wanted to do a good job because he didn't want to let her down. So
now, and remember, she told authorities that the captors, she's pretty sure was the size of like a screwdriver or small because they were so close to her, and that the way they held her is matching up to what the boyfriend is saying also. So, they've got these previous statements from her and then from the boyfriend, because she said they were really close to me. So it wasn't a tool that they stood way back here and branded her. It was a little tool that was closer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So all of these things start to add up. And so after a few weeks of being there, she decides she wants to go home. She tells the ex-boyfriend, this is his version of events. He says she misses her children and she wants to go home. So he contacts that friend who rented the car for him to go up and get her, rents a new car, and he drives her straight up. They don't stop. And she's found, before dawn on Thanksgiving Day. Police were able to corroborate that part of his story with records of the rental car and other things that he was telling the story. And then, so he's describing about how she took this stuff with her and how she threw it. Where did she throw it? In a trash bin somewhere?
Well, her original clothing she threw in the dumpster outside his apartment. But she threw a phone or the burner phone just off the I-5 somewhere as they were driving north. And then, you know what? The only thing that didn't come up in this complaint was, where did the chains come into play?
Yes, Nancy.
No, seriously. He never talked about purchasing the chains or so I'm curious. I think that'll maybe someday come out, when he went and got chains for her. She must have asked for chains. The chains had to come from somewhere.
Right,
yeah.
Lewis?
The FBI investigator, the special agent, Courtney Lanto, who wrote a phenomenal complaint. Well done, special agent. she was very upfront at the beginning of this. Hey, this does not include everything. I'm just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
We're not going to put everything out there. But if this is just a little bit scratching the surface, can you imagine what they have? And those chains are a big factor, because you better believe they also sent that stuff in, and the restraints she had on for DNA. But I want to ask you, Nancy, is there any, because it's not in here and it stuck out to me, and Anna, you know how I like to do this, but was there any mention in any of this, if you've heard of any potential pretext call that was done between the ex-boyfriend and Miss Papini?
To see if she would admit to anything?
Right.
Yeah, because
I don't know, but they did exchange text messages after the fact, because I think they had her that still communicating, but they didn't elaborate on that.
Okay, interesting, because it might have been done through text message or call saying, hey, the cops were here, they're asking me this, what do I tell them, right? They think I branded you, I'm worried I'm going to be arrested, because I think he right now is probably, he obviously has an attorney, I'm sure, but he's probably has worked out some type of contract with law enforcement where he's a cooperator, because the sheriff and the prosecutors in this, they're furious, right? They've been very vocal that more arrests may end up coming down the road here. And he may be one of them if he doesn't end up cooperating 100%. I think that may be hanging over his head, because I find it hard to believe that he branded her, that he did cause some bruising on her, but not directly with his hands. He fired a hockey puck at her, right?
That's what he wanted, yeah.
Right, one of the things, right? I'm thinking, how is he justifying this, right? What do you think she's doing? And Anna, didn't his mom or somebody say, I saw her, she's missing? Do you know what's going on? He was confronted with that at some point.
Yes,
right?
family members confronted him. Not everyone lives in a cave, in this Costa Mesa cave where, the world is going around.
I believe that he said it was after Thanksgiving, when it was all, that she had been found, is when he was like, oh boy, like, okay, this is more than I thought. From what, again, from the interview that's in the complaint, that, but I'm sorry, Liz, what I was alluding to was they kept in contact a little bit, from what I can tell, but not much longer, like into the new year after that Thanksgiving. I think there was a little bit more, it said, but that was it. And then when he was confronted by police, he had said, I haven't been in contact with her since. And I'm sure he gave information specifically.
Right. Nancy and Lucy, you brought up a really good point here. So even if he can have plausible deniability, it's like, look, she told me she was being abused. I was just trying to save her. But then I would say to him, well, if she's being abused and she's telling you that her husband is a horrible human being, why is she asking you to beat her? Why is she asking you to burn her? Why is her condition deteriorating before your eyes and she is self-inflicting, all this pain on herself? Like, this is going on for weeks, and the man's going to work. He comes home and she's like looking more horrible than the way that's the part I don't get. Like, how was he able to say this is okay, even if he didn't know that she had, been abducted? But once she is found, and then she tells this incredible story about being abducted by these two Hispanic women, in this van, and goes on and on about being branded. How did he not go to the police? I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah, he should have. Absolutely. But I think he just was afraid to do anything at that point.
Wow. How do you keep a secret like this? This is the amazing thing. How do you keep a secret this big?
Very likely he shared with somebody what was going on.
Well, the cousins and these people that knew the mom. I'm shocked that none of them
called the police.
Maybe called police. I think they just been the fear of what could have happened to him. I mean, he
was definitely in over her head with this one. I mean, without question, this guy was in over her head. He's got an unstable woman who is harming herself, and is just, everything is insane with this story. So I want to ask you guys this. Do you believe that her husband, Sherri's husband, Keith, knew any of this? Do you believe that he is a victim or he's in on it? Before you answer, I'm going to play a clip, a very short clip. This is an interview that he did with ABC News, Keith, her husband, before she was found. And he's, crying out for her to come back, to be let go, to be found.
Bring her home. Bring her home. Just bring her home.
All right, Lewis, do you believe that the husband was in on this or is a victim himself?
That's not easy, right? So there's me. This is me pausing. I think that at this point today, if you ask him today, he's not going to admit anything because he still is trying to protect her amazingly. Her family is circling around. They're still trying to protect her. So we may never get that admission at some point. But I believe he has seen flags that cause concern. How about that, right? Look, he'd have to be... completely his head in the ground, not to realize that she may not be telling the truth, but this may be just the way he has lived his life with her, right? That she, it enhances everything. And look, we do know that other people that have been around her socially since high school have come forward and said, you can't believe a thing she says. Let's just start with that. Mm-hmm. And this has, Anna, this sounds like a Lifetime story. Right?
A Lifetime movie.
Right? Lifetime movie. Both, right? Who knows? It's crazy, right? But I think deep inside, he doesn't believe her. Will he ever admit it? No. Did he participate in this in any way, shape, or form? I don't believe so. I really don't. I think that he was duped, right? More than maybe the ex-boyfriend was.
Nancy, your opinion?
Yes, along those lines, too. Interesting. So hearing yesterday was for getting, for bail to see if she could get out. And there was a lot of stuff discussed that was pretty interesting. And I found it interesting. She was released and going to be staying with the sister, not him. Sources have told me they have not been together for some time, but that they do stuff together for the kids. And he put up property worth $70,000 or whatever, a secured bond. So her bond was $120,000, $70,000, which was secured by some type of property he has, and then the additional was signed off by her parents, staying with the sister, and then she cannot have contact with family members that could be witnesses unless a lawyer is present. They didn't name him as the family witness member, but she's not staying there with him. So I'm drawing that from that. I think maybe he's a witness to everything and is, maybe not believing everything he could. Now, on the other hand, there's a lot of speculation out there because this GoFundMe that was started for them for when she went missing was, raised substantial money that they used for living expenses and paid down a big chunks of his credit card and her credit card. So people were like, well, wait a minute. Was this all a ploy to get money to pay off their debt or something like that, together? I think that's a little inkling that people are like kind of latching onto. But the fact that I think she's not going right home, there's this, there's a condition of release that she has to have an attorney around with any family member that's a witness, makes me think something's up there.
Oh, I think so too. My opinion is I don't believe that he knew her plan that she was hatching, that the FBI has, sketched out for us. I believe that he really was absolutely freaked out that something horrible had happened to his wife. My guess is initially he bought the story because of just looking at her condition. Her physical condition was such that something horrible had happened to her. Something horrible had happened to her, but at her own hands. And now I think that when he was in that room and presented with the FBI's theory that strange that your room you were held in is just like your ex-boyfriend's, and we have this and we have that, and we have, I think at that point he's like, wow, you had two men in your phone. Okay, I get it. You may have not been happy, but now all of this is snowballing. And I do believe that now he doesn't believe her. I don't think that he was in on it from the beginning. Now, the fund that you're referring to, Nancy, is the Help Find Sherri Papini Fund, which raised over $49,000. ultimately, that money was used to pay off some credit card debts and personal expenses after she was returned. Now, here's the thing, everyone. With a GoFundMe like this, who's ever in charge of the GoFundMe can do whatever they want with this money.
That's right.
Right? They can say it's for this. And then if she had really, truly been abducted, okay, let's just say that it really happened, that maybe there would have been all sorts of extra expenses, missed work, and right, all this other stuff, which maybe most people would be okay with because the whole point was to help, right? It didn't bring her back, but maybe it'll help the family heal. Now everyone is feeling like they've been taken because they donated to this, they prayed for her safe return, and now they've all been duped, they've all been tricked, and I don't know whether any charges could come of that, but I think GoFundMe is totally different from, a nonprofit or something else. It's not like he hid, the bank statements or anything like that.
No.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Indication. Now, on the monies that she took from the Victims Assistance Fund, it looks like almost all the money was used for therapy and for her stress, PTSD, and anxiety. Now, what is shocking to me is, okay, so she did use the money because the money's limited in how you can use it. So she uses it for therapy. Now, okay, I think all three of us and everybody listening is in agreement. This woman needs some serious therapy without question. Mm-hmm. But what's fascinating is that, did the therapist not pick up on, this woman is not making any sense? And then all these things that would allegedly emerge during her therapy session. The details. And then she would call the cops. Oh, I remembered this. Right?
Right.
So that's what they have her on. It's the charge of the misuse of that money that's meant for real victims. And the authorities say she's not a victim. So the next thing I want to talk about is her arrest, because it's like everything else in her life. It was big and it was dramatic. All right. So Nancy, how did this go down? Because you've been in on all the court hearings where all this juicy information has been coming out.
Interesting. Again, two different ways of how it all went down. There's law enforcement's version and Sherri's version. So, of course, law enforcement, the assistant U.S. attorney, is presenting why they don't want her released. She's a flight risk, first of all, is their first and foremost. Hello, she did it once before. She's a flight risk is what they were arguing. And the other thing they were saying is that she has a pattern of dishonesty, that everyone they've interviewed and talked to and stuff, that this pattern has emerged of this pattern of dishonesty. So these were things that they were talking about. And they discussed how the arrest went down, which was, they said they surveyed her from home, where she was staying. They followed her to a music lessons for the children of some sort. Once she was inside, they sounded like they sent somebody in to say that her car had been involved in an accident, to draw her away from doing anything in front of the children, and bring her outside by herself. Once she was out there, they, I guess, met her over wherever the car was. They told her she was under arrest, to which she screamed no, turned and ran. They were able to get her rather quickly and cuff her. By then, I believe the kids came out and witnessed them taking her away. Oh, and she threw her phone. She threw her phone again.
It's like the playbook. Throw the phone and run.
Yeah. So when that happened, now, this was going back and forth. The judge was asking a lot of questions about this because her attorney was arguing that that's not how it went down, that his client said she was out there, they did this in front of the kids, they, kind of manhandled her, whatever, that it was way more, she was trying to run to protect her children from seeing this, and, run to them to shield them from what they were about to witness. They had a special agent there ready to testify to describe exactly their version, himself, as opposed through the assistant U.S. attorney. The judge said, no, that's not necessary. I see we have two differing opinions on how this happened. They also asked, her attorney asked that she not have to wear ankle monitor because due to her complex PTSD, just the idea of wearing the ankle monitor because she was restrained during the time she was abducted was too much for her to handle.
I can't. I mean, Lewis, I can't. I see you shaking your head over there. I'm like, I'm losing it over here. Excuse me. Her attorney says, oh, she can't wear an ankle monitor because she has PTSD from her abduction when she was chained. Please give me a break here.
Yeah. Well, first of all, her attorney is parroting only what she told him.
Sure.
Right? Her reality, her truth, right? And now conveniently, she's ringing the bell that these officers, prior to arresting her, and during her arrest, created trauma that was horrible for the children, right? Blaming it on them. I think this is all going to be on video also. I think they knew there was a chance she might lie or fabricate how that went down. So I think they have that covered. But really, none of what she did before traumatized the children, right? Right? And
now we're worried.
Right. And she's resting, one of her defense mechanisms is that she suffers from PTSD because of the kidnapping. Well, back to that, you're still sticking to that? And look, she may suffer from something and PTSD from something else, right? And possible, right? But it's just not from a kidnapping. Let's get that straight, right? You can't use that as a defense because it never happened. And the more they try, the sillier it sounds. Right. And that's really going to come back to haunt them very soon. The husband, right, through the whole course, as I'm not going to talk to law enforcement unless I have my husband present. And then, he's there for all the interviews. And now they're out socializing and doing daily chores, going shopping, going to stores. And I think they walked into a Dick's Sporting Goods. Right. Mm-hmm. And she walks by the gun section and it's guns. And she sees a gun that looks like the gun that was held on her while she was kidnapped. She tells the husband, so he calls it in right away. I have more information, and things like this happen through the whole thing. And she's blank, so she suffered PTSD while she was walking through Dick's Sporting Goods from what? Right? I mean, but there's example after example after example. She's her own worst enemy, and her attorney tells her, shut up, stop it.
So here's the thing. She's been released. She has been released after 5 days in jail. Part of me is like, are you crazy releasing her?
A lot of conditions.
I get that. Yeah. And it's the argument was that, first of all, she doesn't have a criminal background and it's a non-violent crime with which she is charged. So therefore, they just can't hold her like you do, let's say, someone who is accused of murder and it's a heinous murder and something like that. But I mean, people are outraged that she doesn't even have to serve any time while she's waiting for trial. I know presumed innocent until proven guilty. But I mean, people are so mad. I can't wait to hear the comments on this and read them because everyone is furious. She got all this special treatment. The amount of money that was spent on the investigation, the amount of money that was spent on her, phony therapy, and people who donated to the GoFundMe, the people who sat in churches and in their homes praying for her safe return, praying for her healing, her children, all of this. And now everyone's been duped. Everyone is so mad. And what about all the other cases that went without attention?
That's right.
In that time period, because of this princess. So I want to play something. When she was released yesterday, finally, the Sacramento Bee took some video of her coming out of the court building. She's got her hoodie up, she's got a mask on, she's got glasses, so she's really hard to see. And I'm going to presume it was her sister who was waiting for her because it was not her husband. And then the sister grabs her and is trying to shield her as they're walking toward the car, and all the cameras and just angry people are yelling at them, and the family is screaming, leave her alone, right? Well, that's not what you were screaming when you thought she was missing. You wanted everybody's help, know? And then you can hear Sherri crying, crying as she's, going into the car. I'm like, really? This much drama with this woman? Really? Still. This is not over. Yeah. This is not over.
The conditions of her release. Basically, the judge was very firm in explaining to her in detail that if she screwed up any of this while she was out, that she would face an additional 10 years and an additional $250,000 fine served not at the same time, but yeah, on top of. So he made that very clear to her. Like, if any of this is an issue, because they really were hitting home that she was the flight risk, rightfully so. So that was one of the things that they really.
Yeah, I read that too, Louis, that she's got to get some kind of help definitely they're going to need an evaluation. They need to know what the heck they're dealing with this woman. Because
so they said she had to surrender the passport, DNA sample. She cannot leave the Eastern District, which is a very specific area where the court, where she lives. No firearms, can't go anywhere near where there's firearms, no alcohol, no drugs. No contact with witnesses, even family. If there was family that's a witness, they have to have it's modified to have an attorney present. The parents and the husband put up different things to secure her release. And
if I'm her, I think I'm going to do a replay of Costa Mesa and not leave the house. This is my advice to you, Miss Sherri. Do not leave that house because, people are just too angry right now. And you're going to have to do some serious soul searching and repenting here. I want to give the last word, actually, to not any of us, but to the sheriff of Shasta County. He did this exclusive interview with ABC's Good Morning America when she was arrested. And the sheriff, Michael Johnson, has a very strong opinion about this case and about Sherri Papini.
Well, without getting into the details of the case, it is a case of calculated deception, driven, I think, by her narcissistic behavior.
So I think the sheriff said it pretty clearly. He may not be a therapist, but this is narcissistic behavior without question. And this, Nancy, this is not the same sheriff who originally investigated the case.
Yeah.
New sheriff in town.
Well, and both sheriffs, the old and the new, I mean, they were, he said, my community lived in fear since this abduction because they were in fear that there was people out there doing this. And he said, he really felt for his community and wanted it out there to be known that, they don't have anything to fear anymore, that it was, it was all Sherri, it was, and I think that, was important for him. I think he really wanted to get that out there. It seemed to just know, like, I hear you, this isn't okay. And we're doing something about it now.
Louis, do you think that she's going to go for a jury trial? If her attorney is smart, you want to get a plea, you want to get this thing out because it's not going to go well. I mean, for the rest of us, I'd love a trial because it'll be the most entertaining thing ever. Right?
Yeah. I think the attorney is going to advise against it, right? They just have too much. And, Nancy, you held up your packet earlier. Hold that up for a second, right? You have all these green stickers of all the incredible notes.
Look at Nancy's work over there.
Look at that, right? And I did the same thing, but with a highlight. I ran out of it. I had to get a second one. And these things go forever, right? It's incredible how much information is in here, but yet it's not all of it. We're just scratching the top, right?
It's not.
I think she's a flight risk. And I think she's a danger to herself and potentially others. So I'm really concerned. I know the laws are limited on the control the court has as to whether she can be released or not. But I think putting an ankle bracelet on her, a GPS monitor, is more than reasonable with just the facts that were stated in here, and I'm blown away that wasn't done.
Yeah.
Right? And she can still be brought back. I'm sure they can still fight for that, but it's just, this case is just going to get more interesting.
It really is. She's due back in court on March 25th. I'm sure Miss Nancy will be on the line like she's been for all of the court appearances.
So this is a federal case, and I want your true crime junkies to know that this is a federal case. So the way that they're handling it, they're not having people in the courtroom. So we can, as the press or journalists, you can listen in, and that's it. There's no photos. There's none of that, and the details, again, held very close to the vest except for what's in the complaint when it's federal.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's so much more out there. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are going to be state charges as well. The sheriff has said that he expects more charges. It's unclear who or how, and it may be federal, it may be state. I think we're going to watch this case really carefully. As we have all said, we are obsessed with this affidavit. The three of us have gone through it. Last night, I shoved a box of Girl Scout cookies in my mouth as I was highlighting the affidavit because it's like the best thing I've read in forever. And we're linking that to all of you because we know you care about the facts, the details, the how. How did they do it? And I want to thank the two of you so much. I mean, not only are you my dear personal friends, but Nancy, I know, is like all over this case. And Louis, I always value your opinion. So I'm so grateful that we had a chance. I feel like this is the kind of thing we would have done over dinner, right? If the three of us sat down for dinner right now, we would be doing this exact same thing, except we were able to capture it for all of you. I can't wait to hear your comments. Nancy, I know you like to fly under the radar because of the kind of investigations you do, but Nancy's working on some great projects, but her social media footprint is small for a reason. Louis, where can people find you if they want to see what you're up to?
Thanks, Anna. My entire social media footprint is at getbitinvestigations.com. And I just want to add, right, this whole case with what the shenanigans of Sherri Papini, it's so negative, right? Because it's so much human power went in the wrong direction, which it could be used for other cases that are deserving. So because of this, I'm trying to figure out how I can turn this case, at least from the work we do, into something positive. And one of the people that suffered in this investigation was another missing girl who was a schoolmate of Miss Sherri Papini. And her name is Tara Smith. Mm-hmm. And she looked like her. And early in the investigation, they were making a comparison, right? Because of the way they looked, the way they were, they went to the same school, that there might be some connection. There's no connection. But what it did, it took away from looking into her. She's still missing, right? So you and I haven't discussed this yet, Anna, but we're going to. Right?
Are we inserting ourselves?
Yeah. I'm going to reach out to this family and see what we can do. She's still missing.
I volunteer to
help. We're going
to
flip this into something positive.
Nancy, you going to volunteer with us to help? Mm-hmm. We mean it. Those of you who are regular listeners to this podcast know we mean it. We mean it when we say we're going to try and help if we can. That's outrageous, Louis. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Yeah. I was not aware of that case, and that is horrendous. That's horrendous. So let's do something to change that. Let's find some good in here. Wow, Louis, you just blew me away with that. Just totally blew me away with that. This is why I love Louis.
This is what we do, Anna.
This is what we do, yeah. You can find me at Anna G News, Anna with one N, all social media. Sometimes I talk about crime, sometimes I talk about chihuahuas. Today I'm talking about St. John's University. Hello, Big East, big game tonight. Wearing my colors. You can find all our episodes wherever you get your episodes. Subscribe to our True Crime Daily YouTube channel. It's amazing. We've got like 5 million people on that site. So much to talk about there. Sign up to receive our newsletter at truecrimedaily.com. Until next week, this is True Crime Daily, the podcast reminding you, don't do crime.